All right, today I am going to be sewing the Reflections quilt pattern from Fat Quarter Shop. This was a September box for the sew sampler that I have been getting for about 2.5 years now. And my husband actually saw this and is like, oh, can you make this one? So I got the finishing kit. So I will be sewing it exactly as it looks with all the colors, all the fabric that were recommended. So I've already gone ahead and cut all my fabric according to the measurements. I can't give you the measurements, but I've already cut everything, and I've actually done the first step of going ahead, and I like to mark my fabric. I use a friction pen, which disappears with heat. I've gone already and marked all my square triangles. And I've pinned everything, so I have a big stack here and a big stack here, and I'm gonna go sew these today. So I will sew through these, and then we will trim in another video, or iron and trim in another video, and then we will keep putting the quilt together. So again, I've already marked everything. This is the Reflections quilt. It finishes at 51.5 by 66.5. And it's using Denim and Daisy Jolly Bar and the denim material from the Denim and Daisy fabric line, which I think is a Moda fabric line. Yeah, I took it out when I opened the box, so I don't have it anymore. So I'm not using my presser foot because it honestly hurts when I use my presser foot. So I'm gonna use just my start and stop button on my Singer Quantum Stylus. This machine's about 1.5 years old. I had a heavy duty and then I switched it to Quantum Stylus. And I like to mark all my fabric and pin them because it helps keep things in place, especially if you're not gonna sew the same day. I actually did all of this pinning like on maybe Saturday. We had family in, so like, you know, while you're just having a conversation, you just mark your fabric and pin. It's a good way to kill time, get some work done, but not actually, you know, sew. And I pinned everything. I got hundreds, probably thousands of pins at this point. So I used 3 different packets of pins to pin it. And what I did is I sewed straight, and then when I got to the end, I just turned it around and then went back over. If you see, I have 3 lines. 2 of them I've sewn over, and then 1 middle line is where I'm gonna cut for my half triangle squares. And that one I'm gonna show you in another video. So I'm gonna keep repeating this. I think it's 12 of these big ones. These are, whoops. And make sure your machine's not doing something funky like this. All right, so I'm back. So my machine is acting a little funky. I got it fixed, and then I sewed almost all of these half square, make sure I say it right at some point. I think it's half square triangles. HST, half square triangles. Okay, so I'm almost done. I was supposed to sew 12 and I'm on number 10. So what I did before is I marked with 3 lines on all of my pieces. I sandwiched them together, pinned them, and marked my lines. So I have 1 line in the middle, that's my cut line, and then I have a line about 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch away from the marked line on each side. And this is gonna make 24 half square triangles. Now when I mark my line, I mark it just inside of the 1/4 inch line, so that when I sew, even if I sew on the marked line, I will still get my full 6-inch triangle when I press it. And then I have my half square, my lock block ruler, because these are gonna be 6-inch triangles. So I have my lock block ruler that I'm gonna use to help me square up these triangles once I'm done sewing all of them. And what I'm doing is I'm actually sewing both sides at the same, well, not at the same time, but right after each other. Usually I would chain piece this, but for these, when I'm doing two on the same, sometimes I miss one if I'm chain piecing. I don't know how I miss it, but I miss it. So this time I'm just gonna do both sides and then do the next one. So this is the last one for it, for this set. Again, this is the Reflections quilt pattern. It's the September 2014 Sew Sampler box. I'm using Denim and Daisy, and I got the finishing kit from Fat Quarter Shop. And honestly, I've looked for this quilt online because I thought a lot of people were gonna do it because of the colors, and nobody's done it. And that's why I'm doing a video, because nobody's done it. So I really wanted to see how it was done, and usually I watch my favorite content creators make a video, and this one I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do it, because I did get a finishing kit, so it's gonna look exactly how it looks in the pattern from Fat Quarter Shop. And I really love Fat Quarter Shop. In fact, everything that I have is probably branded from them. This guide came from them in a box, this bucket came from them in a box, the patterns from them, the finishing kits from them. All my pins are from them. I think this was Halloween like 2 or 3 years ago. So I really like their products. I think they're a very good quilt shop. They just opened a local quilt shop here, and I've been meaning to go, but their hours are really weird, and I work during the day, so I don't have time to go during the day. I've been meaning to go, but I haven't. So once, maybe if I take a day off, I'll go see what my local quilt shop has. But typically Fat Quarter Shop is where I get all of my stuff from. I don't buy very much fabric, and I actually do have a Hobby Lobby next to me. Well, not next to me, but you know, like half a mile away from me, that usually typically has good clearance on fabrics. So if I need fabric for something, I will go to Hobby Lobby, or I'll wait till like Joanne has like a really good set. But I get the monthly Sew Sampler box, and those typically have either a Fat Quarter bundle or a Jolly Bar. This one is a Jolly Bar. A Jelly Roll, a Junior Jelly Roll. It just depends on what the pattern is for the month. And then sometimes I get the finishing kit. So this is maybe the 3rd or 4th finishing kit that actually, probably 5th or 6th finishing kit that I've gotten. And this one I got because my husband really liked the colors of the quilt. Here's a better picture of the quilt, what it's gonna look like. So he really liked this denim throwback. It's kind of blurry. There we go. This denim throwback colors. And we have another quilt that looks similar to this, the same color scheme that our dog has been chewing on. So we decided that this was gonna be a good one to redo, to replace that one that Mr. Riker has been chewing on. So what I'm gonna do now that I've sewn all 12 of my half square triangles is I am now gonna cut them. Before I start cutting, I'm actually gonna plug in my iron so I can iron it as soon as I'm done. So these are the 3 lines that I drew earlier. If you see, there's 3. There's like a dotted line in the middle, and then 2 solid lines on the side where I did sew. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it right here down the dotted line, and then I have 2 triangles. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my half square triangle. I'm gonna set my seam first. Oh, I may need to refill that. I'll do that in a minute. And then I'm always gonna press to the dark side. Just a little once over. Set my seam. And then press to the dark side. And you can finger press it first. Just make sure it's hot, so, you know, don't burn your fingers. I don't even think I got fingerprints at this point. All right, and then I'm gonna press this a little bit. So this is a lock block And it's really cool because you set it on your fabric like this. And then it kind of holds this groove right here where I pressed. It kind of sits in that groove, so it doesn't move. And on here, I have a 7-inch rotating cutter, which is perfect for this because it's almost the same size. And because I did my blocks, like I drew those lines, they actually came out pretty accurate. So there's not much to trim off. It's basically like a little, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, like a little slither right here, and then the end pieces, dog ears or whatever you want to call them. So I'm gonna go like this, rotate my mat, like this, rotate my mat, this, rotate my mat, and there's not even anything on that last piece to cut off. And just make sure, you know, you pick out the ends. This piece did not get cut. There we go. And there you go. You have a perfect 6-inch half square triangle. Right, so that one's done. I'm gonna show you again on this one. So this is called Lock Block. It's by lockblock.com. I got mine on Amazon. I think I got a 3-pack, 2.5-inch, 4.5-inch, and a 6.5-inch, which is probably the most common half square triangle sizes. So again, I'm gonna line them up, and I think it's worth taking the extra time to draw the lines because as you can see, my blocks are almost perfect. And if I don't draw the lines, they're not this perfect. I know from several blocks not being perfect. So I'm gonna cut again, turn my cutting mat, trim again, keep turning, and the last one. And then when you lift it up, it's perfect. All right, so I'm gonna repeat this for the next 11 ones that I did. So I'm gonna end up with 24 total half triangle squares. All right, I'll be back in a bit. Finished all of my sky blocks, or my sky units. My half square triangles, they're 6.5-inch square, and I made 24 of these. So now I am going to do, these are called mist blocks, and these again are half square triangles, but instead of 6.5 inches, they're actually gonna be 3.5 inches. So I am gonna pick, yeah. So there's a couple in here with these cat pins. I'm gonna do those first so that I can put them into my cat pin box right here. Because I did use a couple of different pin sets since I pinned all of these one day. I drew and pinned all of these one day, like a couple days ago, and now I'm actually sewing it. So again, we're gonna make, this is the, ooh, my needle's not threaded. Whoops. All right, make sure I thread my needle here. Make sure my needle's in the right position. Gotta love automatic threaders. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do without these. All right, so I am making, again, the Reflections quilt from Fat Quarter Shop. This was the September 2024 sew sampler box. And I am on the second unit, which is the mist unit. And these are going to be 3.5 inch half triangle squares, or half square triangles. And what I did to prep for this is I cut all my blocks, I cut out all my pieces, and then I looked at the first couple of steps and they were all half square triangles. So if you look at the pattern, it's the entire pattern is half square triangles right here. So what I did is I marked all of my, or I marked a lot of the half square triangles, and now I'm just sewing two squares on each, and I'm gonna cut them, press them, and then we're gonna start arranging the blocks. And I do have them marked, like this was unit A with F, so I do have it marked as A. So when I do my sets, I actually know where to put them, and I'm not like mistaking them, because there are different, some of them have 2 prints in the Jolly bar that it came with, and I don't want to confuse which number which one goes to. So when I'm sewing, I'm trying to sew either on the line or just to the left of the line, because this will help me when I am cutting my triangles, or sorry, when I cut them in half to make my half square triangle. They're actually gonna look, they're gonna be the right size. They're gonna be 3.5 inch squares. And typically I would chain piece if it's only one side that I'm sewing, but since I'm sewing on both sides, I will just go around and clip as I go. Also, because these are pinned. If I'm not pinning, I will definitely do chain piecing. And I use the like 3 sets of pins, 3 boxes of pins to do those. So I'm trying to make sure that I keep them together, so when I put them back, they're all in the right boxes and they're all together. I like my stuff organized. And the pins are different sizes too, so that's helpful if I sew them all, because I did use them throughout the different blocks. Like I used all cat on the 6.5 inch, but on the 3.5 inch I used some cat and some like hearts, and I think it was like the Easter theme or spring theme. There's like some butterflies and some other shapes in there. Butterfly, hearts, flowers. So I want to make sure I don't mix up my pins. It's just a lot easier to store it in the box that it came in than to have like one big, you know, container full of pins. I tried that before. It was just a mess. Trying to find the right size and trying to take one out of the container was a mess too. So I think I have all my cat pins back. I will put them all. Oh, and I have them stored on this magnetic pin cushion here, pin holder. And I do have other kinds in the bottom. But I wanted the longer pins because it would hold it without me having to put multiple pins on it. Alright, make sure this is locked. Alright, and then these, I think, came, yeah, it came in this box. And there's one random pin in here that's probably from somewhere else. I'll put you on here. Alright, so let's keep going. And you don't have to draw your lines. If you are a seasoned sewer and you can sew without drawing your lines or without a marker, by all means, go ahead. I don't think I am skilled enough to do that, so I take the time and draw the lines. And I think it comes out a lot better because my triangles and my squares are correct. So I just think it works out better for me personally to draw lines. And I'm drawing my lines with a friction pen. These are pilot pens that are heat. They will disappear once heat hits them. So as soon as I iron my block, they all disappeared. So these are the ones that I did earlier, and I sewed on the line, and if you see, the line is gone. So these are cute. They're little heart shapes. Just make sure you're not ironing these. I made a mistake once and I didn't iron over it. I just had it next to it where I was ironed and it melted. So be careful. If you're gonna iron, use glass tip beads because those won't melt. But these plastic ones will. So they're cute, but they're not for ironing. Definitely learned that the hard way. Right, and I'm just gonna keep sewing these. For this unit, I am making 48, so I'm doing 24 of these, and then I'm gonna cut it in half and it'll make 48. And this is the mist unit. So some of these I didn't cut, like I missed maybe an 1/8, a 1/16 of an inch on them. So I'm hoping because I am sewing inside of the line that will make up for that little bit that I didn't cut right. And I cut with my stripology ruler. So one of them may have been folded a weird way and I didn't realize it when I was cutting these blocks or cutting the pieces out. Because when I cut it, I cut like 2, sometimes 4 units, 4 of the same, 4 pieces of fabric at the same time. So it must have been an entire strip, which if I'm making 4-inch cuts, I'm getting 10 blocks from that strip. So I probably have 10 wonky blocks, 10 wonky pieces of fabric. So earlier I actually stopped, made dinner, and then came back. Ate dinner too. It's cold today, like it was in this upper 60, it was probably 70 degrees and that was around 6:30. By 7:30 it was in the 50s. Like some cold front came in and just knocked the temperature down, and it was just wind that came in. It was no rain. And we have construction going on in the background, in the backyard, and there's tarps over everything. So all I heard was the tarp just like blowing in the wind for about an hour straight until whatever came through was gone. We've had construction going on for a long time and it doesn't seem like they want to finish. Once it's done, it will be amazing though. That's what's keeping us sane. while all this construction is going on. Actually, earlier, my thread was acting weird. Like sometimes my machine doesn't like my thread. So I just plucked it into a teacup and put it behind my machine. And I haven't had that problem since. Like sometimes it feeds just fine and sometimes it doesn't. So anytime it doesn't, I just plop it in a cup behind the machine and it just feeds perfectly. I don't know why it's like that, but sometimes it just doesn't want to feed. And I'm using Gitamin thread. That's always what I use. Majority, I would say 90% of my projects, I use white on it. So I know it's not the thread because this is the same roll that I had in the last time I sewed. It's just sometimes it feeds nicely and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes my machine works perfectly like it is today, and sometimes it just doesn't want me to sew. And again, if you've made an error with cutting and it's not, like anything less than a 1/4 inch, I think you can just sew very close to the line that you drew earlier. And that can help make sure that your blocks are the right size, even if you made an error in cutting. But not, you know, like don't cut a 3.5 inch block and expect it to be a 4 inch block. But if you cut, you know, like a 3 7/8, then you could probably squeeze that 1/8 of an inch out. As long as you're sewing like on the inside of that line, that helps. Like the way I'm sewing, my needle is to the left of the line. And that helps me get a perfect square when I trim up, or trim down, sorry. And then if your thread is thick, you really don't want to trim, sew on the line, because you lose that area, you lose a little bit of that fabric if your thread is too thick. Because your block, your seam will actually fold over the thread, and if it's really thick, it just gives it like that hairline of being too short. I think this is a very beginner friendly quilt. It's all half square triangles. So if you hit half square triangles, this really isn't the quilt for you. I used to honestly hate them until I got those block rulers, because they made, like, they would always shift, or my block wouldn't come out right. They always came out wonky. The fabric would be distorted. It's not straight. And a couple of things that I did to help that was drawing lines and pinning, because when you're sewing these, you're sewing on the diagonal, and the fabric tends to move a lot more on the diagonal than they do if you're just sewing straight. So drawing lines and pinning are two things, and then sewing on the left of the line. So if the way my machine is going, my line is drawn, and then I am sewing right next to the line. That gives you a little hairline area to trim down, and then trimming using the block rulers, because those hold, they kind of like sit on the seam a little bit, or clamp onto the seam. Not clamp on, there's a groove in that ruler that butts up against the seam, which stops it from moving. And that was the issue that I used to have, is that my blocks would move. Another thing is, when you're ironing or when you're pressing, try to press straight down and not like go all around, because that will distort your block a little bit. So what I've learned is you like set your seam, and then you press open. And you can finger press, like use your fingers to open it out a little bit before you actually use the iron, so that you're not getting where it like laps over each other. So I think all those things helped, because I really did not like half square triangles at all. And this quilt is all half square triangles. So if you're new to quilting and you don't want to just do square blocks, then this is a good, easy beginner project to do. Because it's really just one shape that you're just repeating in different ways all around the quilt. Like everything on the quilt is half square triangles. There's no really rectangular piece except for the border, I think. Let me double check. I think the border is the only thing. Yeah, the border is the only thing that's rectangular. Everything else is half square triangles. And it's a pretty cool looking quilt. I mean, it looks very, very detailed, and but it's very quick to put together. It's just all one design. Actually, you know what? There are some squares in here. Just yeah, there are a couple of just regular squares. But all the effect are half squares. G. Yeah, unit G. Yeah, there we go. These are just, these don't get cut down any. These don't get sewn to anything else. Oh, just 3 more to go for this one. I also think that marking your fabric in advance, especially for this quilt, because it used only half square triangles, it made it really easy for me to just prep it in advance. So when I sat down, all I was doing was just sewing. And then, you know, if you sew everything, then when you get up, just iron everything. Cut it, iron it, trim it down, and then you're ready to sew again. And that's kind of what I did. I just looked at the first couple of steps, marked them down. You know, sometimes when we're watching TV at night, I usually cross stitch, but if I'm not cross stitching, like you just mark it out, mark out whatever you need to mark out. And it just makes it easier when you're at the machine. You know, you're not really thinking, you're just sewing. Just keep your piles organized so you know which unit you're done. I think that's probably going to be the most confusing thing, is making sure that you don't mix up your units. And that's why I kept the labels on mine, so they were all using the same background. F. They all used F, but like A, B, and I think C. No, A, B, and D all used the same background, but they're placed in different places throughout the block. All right, I can't believe it's like 5:45 and it is pitch black outside. Like, I can't even see outside. I'm just seeing the reflection of myself in the window. It is so dark outside. And Aiden has soccer practice in about 2 hours. All right, so these are all of Unit A. I am actually gonna put one of Unit B in here. Oh, D did use the same one too. So this is how I kind of clip them together, so I know I'm gonna put one of B in here so that I can get this one out without having to cut my thread. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut all of these, press them, and trim them down.